Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. I'm Reagan King, joined as always by my good friend and co-host Simon Barrett. And this evening we will be talking about the encroaching impact of facial recognition technology. We're looking at a system wherein passports, keys, security devices, all sorts of things that we know right now taking place in order to access are being replaced, could be replaced, a report in the past week has said, within the next 5 years by facial recognition technology. And a question that leads on from that is very important. Is facial recognition technology leading us to the mark of the beast? This is all in relation to that end-time infrastructure which is described in Revelation. It's so important that we are awake and aware to what's going on and that we have a conversation about this. Now, evening, Simon.
Good evening, Reagan. Good to see you.
It's great to see you. Would you consider yourself a particularly techie person?
Not particularly.
Me either.
I mean, I do like my phone. Yeah. I do like my watch, which is tech, which if you go running, gives you all the information, how many steps you've done, your heart rate, and everything else. I like that. And so therefore I think with technology plays a kind of huge part in our life. But I think what we are about to enter into is the biggest technological change of our lifetimes over the next few years. And what we're seeing, as you rightly said, is literally, I believe, the infrastructure being built that the Antichrist will use to enslave the world and create a one world government. Because with face recognition technology, combined with mass surveillance like in China, combined with a social credit system, combined with AI technology, with a digital currency and a central digital bank, you have all the technology for total control of the not only of this country by any government, but control of the entire world's population. That everyone's movements can be monitored. Everyone can be recognized through facial recognition technology, and there'll be nowhere to hide. So we are effectively seeing the effects of this technology being used to give someone kind of omnipresence, which only God has that ability to be omnipresent all the time. But this technology will certainly give a figure like the Antichrist that ability to be omnipresent.
Well, there's serious concerns about what facial recognition technology means for our personal and civil liberties. This isn't the first time that we've talked about this kind of infrastructure, this end-time sort of infrastructure, and that it seems to be depicted in Revelation. A few years ago, we specifically discussed that Chinese social credit system. I think it's one of our most viewed Behind the Headlines episodes. Then we also talked about how in Canada there was this ability to halt funding and money and freeze bank accounts of Canadian truckers, and we kind of merged that into this concern that with increased technology and increased governmental overreach, money can be frozen, personal accounts can be stopped, complete abdication of responsibility in how a government treats its citizens simply based on political views that are deemed unfavorable. Personal choices in the Canadian truckers situation. But now we're talking about another element that's on the scene. Many of you, I'm sure, on your phones, you hold your phone up and you have facial recognition technology. I don't know about you. Do you use that? I don't use that. I don't. Maybe my phone does it. Maybe I don't know. But it's not something I'm overly keen on. But we are aware of how you can go into supermarkets, and most supermarkets, if it's in an urban area, you're going to have a majority of self-checkout. And I noticed at first these were just normal self-checkouts. Now they're self-checkouts with cameras. And so you're there and you're you're scanning through, and it's noticing you, and you're paying. And I'm not going to tell my Amazon UK story again, but there are whole supermarkets that are built on this sort of facial recognition technology infrastructure.
No, absolutely. I mean, what we're seeing essentially in the next couple of years is going to be a technological revolution that is going to change all of our lives.
Would you say it's like a third industrial revolution?
Very much so, because everything will be virtual and everything will be online, and our whole life we'll have one identity here and another identity in this digital world. And the fact is that at the moment, if we want to go and unlock our front doors, we need keys. We need keys to unlock our cars. We need passports if we want to go on a plane. We need to buy a rail ticket if we want to go on a train. Well, if you're in London, you just kind of tap either your Oyster card, or you can actually tap a credit card to use transport. But you won't need any of that in 4 or 5 years, according to the Sun newspaper and their technology section, because face recognition will do that. They will recognize you by your face, and cameras will take a digital image of your face, and wherever you are, those cameras will then pick up your face, and so therefore there will also be no need for cash. So this also works very well with a digital currency, a cashless society, mass monitoring of cameras, and of course AI technology underpins all this, because shops will be able to identify who you are before you even go into that store, and we'll be able to then market your likes and your preferences. You could say that this is sci-fi. It is sci-fi, but it's only a couple of years away, and it'll become a reality for everyone. So there is a scene where Tom Cruise, who I'm not a great fan of as an actor, in The Minority Report that came out in 2002, comes out in the airport and he sees the digital adverts catered for his personal likes. So this is going to be the same thing if you go into retail. The retailers will find out what you like, what your preferences are. They're going to know more about you than when you actually then go into the shop. So it's already big tech, the retail outlets, others will know, and the government and the police will know far more about us than we know about ourselves.
But it's almost that way anyway, to some degree. We've been seeing this for several years. There was a very fascinating, troubling documentary, very accurate, I think, in many ways, called The Social Dilemma a few years back on Netflix. And it details how already we have so much in our technology and systems that it picks up our conversations. Look, I was having a conversation about a particular drink that I'd never heard of or seen before. And then suddenly I get adverts on my phone for this particular drink I've never heard of before, that I'd only just been exposed to on this particular occasion. Talking about a particular holiday destination on one occasion, one that I had not been to, and suddenly I start getting adverts, holidays to this particular place. Never searched, only had a conversation with other people. Okay, so then you start to see that the adverts are increasingly intelligent in relation to other things that I might be interested in buying. They flag up. It's like, I do actually like that. So on a low scale, we already see this infrastructure in place. But a part of the problem, and this article raises it, entitled "Face the Future: How Facial Recognition is Set to Replace Keys, Passports, and Tickets Within 5 Years," is this idea that it's a breach of privacy.
Well, this is the big question I think we need to unpack, but we also have to acknowledge that this was a great article that was published in the Sun last week on their digital version in their tech pages. So it goes on to say that Britain is about to embark on, Britain is about to embark on a future where facial recognition technology will be used throughout every day at homes and schools and shops and hospitals. It also then talks about how, for example, that super smart tech is predicted to be worth £15 billion by 2032. is set to replace house and car keys and will even be used to take school registers. The article goes on to say that within the next 5 years, we could ditch boarding cards and passports at airports and tickets on buses, on trains and tubes. Our faces will help to confirm our medical records to GPs and hospital staff for added security, and your face could soon be your passport to everyday life. It says it will help doctors access medical records, while transport access will also change with Face ID used to allow you onto trains, planes and buses. You'll be able to access your car and your home will be done through face recognition. Even trips to the supermarket will see your face scanned to deter known thieves. Not even a trip to the football, bookies or casinos will be free from it. And it may even be used to take a register at school. So we have someone being quoted in this article. Jake Moore of cybersecurity firm Esset said, face recognition will be in almost every part of our life in the years to come. But referencing the 2002 Tom Cruise sci-fi film Minority Report, you want to say there are lots of people, lots of pros about it, but used badly, face recognition technology is a terrifying and poses great danger. Says if it falls into the wrong hands, we could see a Minority Report style future where people are arrested before they commit a crime, or stores who know who you are before you enter.
Viewers, I'm sure, are familiar with the actor Jim Caviezel. He was involved in that film Paul the Apostle of Christ and played Jesus in Passion of the Christ.
And Superman, right?
And Superman. He was also in a brilliant film, Count of Monte Cristo, which was a fantastic film. Was he in Superman?
Yeah, I think that's how he became famous. Like Clint.
So here there was a TV series, multi-year running TV series that was based on this whole idea called Person of Interest. And there's this idea of this machine that it facially recognizes people. It's the same model here. And what's interesting is this TV series, which was, I don't know, maybe from like 2008 onward to 2015, something along those lines, It was recognizing what is now taking place and security concerns, how it can be abused, state overreach, authoritarianism and totalitarianism coming into play, different security agencies. Very, very well done. And it's been fascinating over the past few years, Simon, to see some of those same concerns that television show identified, and that, of course, it's depicted in Minority Report, some of those same things that are shown in that. So it's like we know that this is problematic, but we launch ourselves as humanity headlong into something that we know is problematic. Now, I think a lot of that, though, is because of our propensity to self-harm and self-destruction as part of our human nature. It's also something that is, frankly, inevitable given the nature of God's plan and purpose that He's revealed to us. It's simply for we who are in Christ to watch, this is not a program trying to stir up fear, it's trying to stir up discernment so that we live our lives with discernment, so that we are aware of what's going on in the world, not so that we shelter away and run from everything and just kind of live in a hole somewhere, but so that we actively are aware and prepare ourselves for what's to take place.
Absolutely, and I think this is a warning that technology will be used to bring about a dystopian future, as described in the book of Revelation. Now, it's interesting to know, when I was doing the research for the program, really, how long face recognition technology has been about. So, wow. Face recognition technology is not new. It was developed nearly 60 years ago, and according to the Teus Group website, under the headline Face Recognition Technology, says the following. It says a research team led by Woodrow W. Bledsoe ran experiments between 1964 and 66 to see whether programming computers could recognize human faces. The team used a rudimentary scanner to map the person's hairline, eyes and nose. The task of the computer was to find matches. It wasn't successful.
And it goes on to say the face recognition problem is made difficult by the great variability in head rotation and tilt, lighting intensity and angle, facial expression, aging, etc. Computers find it harder to recognize faces than beat grandmasters at chess. it would be many years before these problems were overcome, but apparently they were, thanks to ongoing camera technology improvements, mapping processes, machine learning, and processing speeds. Eventually, there's this what's been presented that they can accurately detect faces and identify the people involved. And indeed, even in recent days, we've also seen how Meta, which owns Facebook and various other groupings, have produced these particular glasses that are like the Google Lens from several years ago, a little bit experimental, but it's progressing to some degree. And there's been some app developers who programmed an app which can, you wear these glasses and they secretly film and can identify the individual who stood in front of you or just a random person in the street, brings up all of their social media, brings up their address even. Very troubling things. Now, they said, the developers of the app said, we're not releasing this. We only wanted to show what dangers could be. But you know, this is already in use.
Can you imagine that in the hands of a kind of authoritarian secret police force?
It's already there, I'm sure.
You know, and then to find out where people are and then to arrest people. I mean, yeah, the technology in the wrong hands is very dangerous. But I think it's important as well to let our viewers know how face recognition technology works. So we're going into the kind of scientific aspect for the program. So the tech takes a 3D scan of a face, then measures the distances between the eyes, the ears, and the nose. The technology then uses the data to create a biometric profile that is unique to each person. Apple recently launched its Biometric on its phones, whilst face recognition could soon be used in schools. So we see here, for example, that Jake Moore again is a global cyber security advisor, said it's a clever piece of technology and it only needs to be pointed at your face for a second. By scanning the image, it uses points that will look at the distance between your eyes, ears, and where your nose is. All of these will be unique to you. All of those are different points and different focal lengths from the camera, so it knows it is a 3D image, so it creates a 3D image of your face. And this is your actual face, so it cannot be used on a photograph of you. It can then identify the image as being uniquely you. If used against a database, this biometric analysis can immediately be compared to many millions of other images for your use. And there's also another report here by the Daily Mail that facial recognition technology software works by matching real-time images to previous photographs of a person. Says that each face has approximately 80 unique points across the eyes, nose, cheeks and mouth, which distinguishes one from another. A digital video camera measures the distance between various points of the human face, and then we say produces a unique numerical code that can then be linked with a matching code gleaned from previous photographs. And then facial recognition systems can be used, as they are in China, to connect to millions of CCTV cameras, uses AI to pick out targets, and experts believe that facial recognition technology will soon overtake fingerprints technology as the most effective way to identify people. Scary.
I mean, we already have biometric passports. Okay, and those biometric passports have everything essentially about us to identify. You know, you're going through the gates. It's nice and quick. It's much easier in theory, apart from when the system breaks down and then no one knows what to do. But it has your full name, your date of birth, photograph, biographical information, biometric information, which includes iris scans and fingerprints. So you're already on the record. You're already
we have that
there.
on our passports as well.
Yeah. So
passports.
Well, this is what it is. A unique chip identification number is in that biometric passport. Digital signature that protects the stored data from being altered, in theory. But is that something that's foolproof? I highly doubt it, and I'm sure that honesty would demand that the individuals behind it acknowledge that also. Often the chip embedded in the passport is so small it's undetectable to those in possession of the passport. Now, you have the symbol is there, it shows if it's a biometric passport or not, but you know, I don't know of anyone now, I believe they have phased out the
you can't enter the States without one.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go back home. You
In.
couldn't go back home without a kind of biometric passport.
Well, cameras are everywhere, and America is expanding its surveillance society. Speaking of going back home, this is my home now, but in America, they are expanding this surveillance system, and it's raising very severe privacy concerns. Here's a special report from CBN.
A recent report estimates about 1 billion security cameras rolling worldwide, 18% of them here in the United States. Like at this ATM, every time you do your banking, you're caught on camera. But you don't have to be using a service like that in order to be caught on camera. In fact, just walking down the street, you can be captured on closed-circuit TV. The U.S. is second only to China when it comes to keeping eyes on its citizens. Make no mistake, Big Brother is watching. According to safety.com, the average American is caught on camera 238 times each week.
Wow. It surprises me, and it feels a bit weird to think about that.
Concerning at all?
No, I just think it keeps people safer than it doesn't. And if you don't want to be doing something that shouldn't be recorded, don't do it.
Here's how those 238 camera views rack up. Cameras capture you at home or in your neighborhood 14 times a week, 160 times behind the wheel. While you're working, candid cameras catch you 40 times, maybe more if you're in retail, travel, or high security industries, and 24 times a week while shopping or running errands.
I mean, I don't like it, but I don't know if it surprises me. But yeah, not a great thing to know.
Jay Stanley is a senior policy analyst with the ACLU.
We're seeing a very rapid increase in the amount of public cameras that Americans are subject to. Right now, we have about 15 cameras for every 100 people in America, about 50 million cameras. And that's more per capita than any other country in the world, even China. I mean, the basic concern is that we're going to lose our privacy and we're going to become a country that's different from what we've always been. That from the moment you step out of your front door until you return home at night, every moment of your life in public will be recorded, potentially scrutinized, watched.
He says it's often artificial intelligence keeping track, not humans.
Computers that analyze your daily routines, that understand what you're doing, what you're carrying, what you're wearing, who you are, what your attributes are, and filing that away somewhere.
You don't expect privacy on the street corner. So if a camera captures what you're doing on the street corner, I don't think that's an intrusion on privacy.
UCLA law professor Eugene Volokh believes the positives outweigh the negatives.
Makes it easier, for example, to catch criminals. Maybe makes it easier to exonerate people who are falsely accused of crime. May also deter crime. While cameras have their problems, the question is compared to what? Compared to more aggressive police presence, the problems may be less.
Both experts agree the biggest concern is the potential for government tracking its citizens under the guise of crime prevention.
We're seeing some cities like Chicago putting police cameras all over the city and networking them together. They're also tying in private cameras. In some cases, the Ring cameras are being networked together by Amazon, which takes all the camera feeds and puts them in the cloud, potentially making them available to the authorities.
Part of the solution, experts say, is private citizens asking themselves several questions before installing cameras on personal property. Do you trust the manufacturer who may store images on their own servers? Do you trust the internet? Because any cameras tied to the web are susceptible to being hacked. And do you trust the government? That in many cases can use a warrant to access what your camera captures.
But if you're really worried about that, I think the solution is to make it harder to abuse the cameras and not to stop them altogether.
Nobody's saying that you can stop technology from rolling forward, but you can put some constraints on it, shape how it's deployed so that it comports with our values.
Stanley says that's where lawmakers should step in. He says they need to implement laws controlling access to these cameras, allowing us to benefit from this tech without becoming a surveillance society. In Washington, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
That's thanks to Eric Phillips of CBN. And we have to acknowledge the fact that we are living in a surveillance state, and increasingly CCTV cameras are absolutely everywhere. It's when they also use the cameras with face recognition technology that then becomes a big problem. So it's important to see how currently face recognition technology is in use. And the Sun reports the fact that this will replace house and car keys. And the Locky Visage system has been launched in the UK for around £300. It replaces your front door's deadbolt and offers a high-tech security system. So you can already use face recognition technology now to get into your home. Locky says they can store up to 100 facial profiles of people who it can then let in without a key. Now, other than my wife, I don't think I want anyone else to come into my house. Meanwhile, the Genesis GV60 car scans your face and gets you in and sets the temperature and music to suit you. Then we see that a fingerprint sensor starts the engine. Within the home, such systems can scan your face to tailor TV shows and apps for you. French firm Atos Origin is launching a self-service coffee machine that recommends drinks based on your previous preferences. Do like that idea, actually. Similar tech could stop young children accessing social media. Delta Airlines is testing face recognition technology so it can replace boarding cards and passports. Passengers register their face at home, then at the airport. Biometric software then analyzes faces and matches them with other user details. Face recognition is already being trialled in the UK transport system. Thousands of rail travellers and 80 stations, including London's Euston and Manchester Piccadilly, have had their faces scanned during trials over the past 2 years, aimed at tackling fare evasion. And now we see that Japanese firm NEC is trialling tech at some of the UK restaurants so it can match facial recognition with customers' information such as favourite food items, past drinks orders, special occasions such as birthdays and food allergies, which is all linked to AI technology.
The Californian company Face First is now offering systems for shops that use cameras in the entrances to identify people as they come in. Kind of what I was referring to a little bit ago. When important customers are spotted, quote unquote important, customers are spotted, a text message can be sent to appropriate sales staff to ensure they provide personal attention. But of course that can also be abused in all manner of ways. Security company FaceWatch has also started selling technology to shops to replace security guards. Now, this one amuses me a little bit, Simon, because the security guards, they're not really meant to be there to just identify someone who's stealing. They're actually meant to provide a physical force, should it be needed, against someone who is breaking the law in some way or another. So, I mean, this technology to replace security guards, okay, it can identify people, but it can't apprehend people.
It will when they bring in robots.
Oh, okay, I knew we were going there. The robots, the droids, bring in the droids.
Yep. That's all going now.
I mean, no, it is.
We can laugh about this and smile about it and think, yeah, this is unthinkable. But this probably will be reality in the next 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
We've talked about that before. We talked about it a couple of years ago. And we're running headlong into this dystopian Terminator-esque future. It's interesting. You see these things and you're like, this never works out in sci-fi movies, but sci-fi is increasingly becoming real.
What was interesting, actually, I watched a video in preparation for this program yesterday, and it talked about how no, it wasn't Terminator, it was actually Minority Report in 2002, was produced by Spielberg. And Spielberg met with 5 of the leading technological scientists or technicians that are developing this technology to come up with the idea of the Minority Report. So the fact is that this film is now 22 years old, and now it's more relevant than whenever the film came out, it is absolutely incredible. But the Daily Mail have actually reported, only a day before we're actually recording this program, that the UK police have been heavily reliant on face recognition technology. And so their headline for this article was, a policing tool so controversial authorities rarely admit to using it, and is a link to more than 1,000 criminal investigations. Do you want to unpack this?
It's a controversial facial recognition company that's built a massive photographic dossier of the world's people for use by law enforcement. It's been used in more than 1,000 police investigations without authorities announcing use of the software. Despite opposition from lawmakers, regulators, privacy advocates, and the websites it scrapes for data, Clearview AI has continued to rack up new contracts with police departments and other government agencies. Now, an investigation by the Washington Post has revealed how hundreds of U.S. citizens have been arrested after being connected to the crime, not through good old-fashioned policing or hard evidence as such, but through use of facial recognition software. And this is concerning. You can say, well, that's great, that's fantastic if it's apprehending legitimate criminals. The problem is there's also abuses of this, and this is what we have to be aware of as we increasingly see freedoms eroded, Christian freedoms particularly increasingly coming under attack. We know that this will be used to ostracize, to find, to imprison, to
we could find ourselves being the enemy of the state. There's another Hollywood film mentioned there as well. Yeah. So it says here that Clearview has provided access to its face recognition software to more than 2,220 different government and law enforcement agencies around the country. This is in the States, including Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the US Secret Service, the Drug Enforcement Agency, and more. It pulls photos and personal data from a wide range of online sources that include social media sites such as Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn, which it uses to create individual profiles of people. Clearview app then uses these profiles to identify individuals in the photo that their clients, such as the police department, uphold. So in the past, the company was subject to controversy after it was found to be scraping pictures from social media without people's consent. The pictures were used to train its facial recognition algorithm.
The collection of images, approximately 14 photos for each of the 7 billion people on the entire planet, scraped from social media and other sources, makes company's extensive surveillance system already the most elaborate of its kind. But now it is law enforcement who are under scrutiny after failing to be transparent as to how the tech is being used. And there's very, very real concern after about 24 U.S. state or local governments passed laws restricting facial recognition after studies found the technology was less effective in identifying black people and had on a number of occasions wrongly identified suspects. When police departments were asked by the Post to explain how the specialized software was used, most refused to give details, while others claimed facial recognition was never used solely to provide a concrete match, just to suggest possible suspects. We have a further report on this from our friends at CBN. Facial recognition accuracy under fire. Scan study picks 28 Congress members as criminals. May well be. Here's the report.
Biotechnology isn't new. Fingerprints and DNA analysis have been around for a long time. The new concern is using facial recognition without a person's knowledge or consent. Today's latest tech has been featured in sci-fi movies for decades.
This is Captain James Kirk of the USS Enterprise.
Good evening, John. You can move the old-fashioned. Now, life wildly imitates art when faces and pictures we post on social media are instantly recognized. For some, it's frightening. On Capitol Hill, skepticism about facial recognition programs being rolled out by Customs and Border Protection and the TSA.
To be clear, CBP is only comparing the picture taken against photos of previously provided by travelers to the U.S. government for the purposes of international travel. This is not a surveillance program.
Perhaps not, but the technology has some flaws.
Age, race, and sex. There are demographic effects. Quantifying those in a statistically valid manner is what we're currently doing.
So is that women and dark-skinned people?
Yes.
To better illustrate this, an ACLU study used facial recognition to compare members of Congress with 25,000 arrest photos.
That software incorrectly matched 28 members with individuals who had criminal records. Although the misidentified members included both Democrats and Republicans, men and women, and a wide range of ages, nearly 40% of the false matches were people of color. This is unacceptable.
Experts believe issues with picture quality will improve over time. And what about privacy? ICE has been comparing driver's licenses in 3 states against their records without public knowledge.
I do not believe that anyone has a reasonable expectation of privacy in a government ID photo, period.
When it comes to identifying criminals, some say the benefits of the technology outweigh the negatives.
Effective facial recognition technologies can improve law enforcement by ridding this process of bias and human error.
The National Institute of Standards and Technology is performing a comprehensive analysis of facial recognition where demographic issues are concerned. The results should be out this fall. In Washington, Eric Phillips, CBN News.
We are privileged to be joined for this evening's Behind the Headlines by Jeremy Peckham, who is a Christian expert on AI. He's also written a book, Masters or Slaves, AI and the Future of Humanity. Jeremy, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience in the AI field, especially in relation to facial recognition technology.
Well, I started a long time ago in the field of artificial intelligence, as it's popularly called now. Of course, it wasn't called that when I first started out in the early 1980s. My specialism has been for many years speech and natural language processing. So if you think Siri, Alexa, computers that you can talk to. And I was involved as a project director for a number of years of a pan-European project looking at speech understanding and dialogue, particularly over the telephone. And we did some quite pioneering work there in the late 80s, early 1990s. So that's my area of expertise in speech pattern processing and natural language processing. And it's a technology that's basically based on what are called neural networks, which is the foundation of most of current day machine learning for so-called generative AI, large language models for things like facial recognition. That's just about pattern recognition, essentially. So that's my background, and I've focused more in the last several years on looking at the significant ethical implications of rolling out this technology to many, many different application areas, including facial recognition.
And Jeremy, the Sun newspaper ran a very interesting article last week in their tech section, essentially saying that face recognition technology will be a commonplace in the next 5 years, that it will replace the use of having a door key. If we want to get into a car, it will open up our cars. We will no longer need passports because face recognition technology will be used instead of our passports. We won't need train tickets. Just share with us your thoughts on the speed of this technological revolution that we're living through, and how within a few years face technology recognition will be absolutely everywhere.
I think the fundamental problem that we're facing at the moment is there's a very gung-ho attitude towards deployment of artificial intelligence. Some regard it as our economic savior. It's going to improve productivity. It's going to do this. It's going to do that. Solve so many big problems that we have, whether it be health problems or climate change. And the trouble is there's a huge amount of naivety behind those sorts of statements. And I think they're fueled by big tech, who has obviously a narrative that they want to put out there in terms of how powerful this stuff is. But the reality is really quite different from from the narrative that is shared so frequently in the media about this stuff being as smart as humans, for example. And we've seen already the consequences of rollout of surveillance technology in China, as an example, where there is much being done with facial recognition, gait analysis, for example, social credit scoring, this sort of thing. And it's just everywhere there. And I think that there are huge dangers to this technology being rolled out in terms of civil liberties. I mean, it's one thing, for example, to use facial recognition to open your phone. I use facial recognition on my phone. You can think of what's the risk if somebody else gets my phone. Okay, there may be some private data there, but you can make a judgment. You can decide whether you want to buy a phone or not. I certainly wouldn't use facial recognition to open my car because that's a higher value device. Certainly, definitely wouldn't use it to get into my home. So I think we have to look at the risk profile. What are we using it for, and is it reliable enough? And at the other end of the spectrum, if we start to use this technology in the public sphere, where the Met Police are using facial recognition, they've increased in the last year or so significantly the extent to which they're using it. This is a massive invasion of our civil liberties, and basically the technology doesn't work that well, so you get a lot of false positives, people being hauled over by the police to be questioned, to give their identity, and very often that they're innocent people. Actually, more often than not, they're innocent people just going about their business. And I think that's a very, very sad state of affairs when we get to that point.
Okay, Jeremy, you mentioned a minute ago about the social credit system in China, and of course that brings to mind a lot of thoughts regarding state overreach. What are the concerns about privacy stemming from facial recognition, particularly in relation to things like police databases?
Well, I think a key question is who's on that database, and who knows who's on that database, and who are people of interest. What are the criteria for determining whether they're people of interest and they should be on the database? And I think the reality is that we're probably seeing a lot of what you might call low-level risk type of people going onto that database, as well as so-called terrorists or hardened criminals. And there's who's policing that database, and who knows who is there. You get pulled over even for being suspected to be a person of interest. How do we know that you're not then logged? There's a famous case of a guy called Sean Thompson in London who was harassed by the Met Police for I think about half an hour. Notwithstanding that he gave them plenty of evidence of who he was. He was a young black guy working with the Street Brothers, I think they call themselves, who are actually working very positively to try and reduce knife crime in London. So here was this citizen, innocent, actually doing good in the community, being hassled. They tried to get his fingerprints, but he refused. Fortunately, he knew his rights. But someone like that, any one of us, who gets pressurized into giving your fingerprints, you're on the system. And the fact that you've been pulled over, how do we know that you're not remaining on that persons of interest database? And I think with all of these things, what happens is you get mission creep. So that it's all very well to try and sell the story that we want to catch terrorists, but who else might you start surveying and looking out for? And of course, governments can change, their views can change as to what is good behavior and what is not good behavior. And who knows when we might get to a point where Christians are regarded as fundamentalists and a danger to the state. That sounds a bit ludicrous for us in the UK, but of course we know many states where that's the truth. So Christians in China have to be very, very careful to stay away from facial recognition cameras because they know they're on the database, and they have to travel to their meetings really quite carefully. So I think there's a huge impact in terms of our data ending up on these databases, and it's a shame, I think, that in one sense, because we're not now in the EU regulation is much tighter on this than the UK's regulation or lack of at the moment.
And Jeremy, what are you concerned about the thoughts of face recognition technology combined with AI, mass surveillance, a digital currency, a central bank in terms of government surveillance, but also control of its citizens? And surely this technology in the wrong hands just leads us into a dystopian future, does it not?
I think so. I mean, much has been written about the so-called surveillance capitalism, and that is where in the West, actually, it's currently big tech that's doing most of the surveillance. So every keystroke that you make on your keyboard, what you visit, what you look at, that's already being sucked up and processed and sold to the advertisers. And okay, you might regard that as relatively benign. But it's the same thing that is often said, that these companies know more about us than we perhaps know about ourselves. And I think then if you put that sort of technology into the hands of the state is there really to protect its citizens. And the problem with that is when the state starts to move in directions that are against perhaps the views of maybe a minority of its citizens. We've seen this as Christians already, where Christian values are eroded, and take the assisted suicide bill, the idea of bringing that in at the moment, and people are less and less interested to hear the Christian viewpoint on things like that. So I think it's again, as I say, it's all about mission creep, whether it be facial recognition, whether it be cyber currency, whether it be actually another proposal that Starmer, I think, has put forward is to be able to access your bank records and all of that to supposedly to try and prevent benefit fraud. What we end up doing is really basically shifting from you're innocent until proven guilty to a position where everybody is guilty. You need to prove yourself innocent, and we'll do that by sucking up your data, spying on you, looking at your face, looking at where you've gone, where you're moving about. And it sounds a dystopian future, and the danger is that we will just slip ever closer to a surveillance state, as well as being surveyed by big tech because of our obsession with the digital world, if you like.
Thank you so much, Jeremy, for joining us for this week's edition of Behind the Headlines. God bless you in your important work, and thank you for the insights that you've given to our viewers.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you.
Well, it's wonderful that Jeremy Peckham could join us for this programme with his expertise and his knowledge and his concerns as a Christian regarding where this technology is leading us. And we're already seeing, aren't we, Reagan, that, for example, the European Union have rolled out face recognition border identity checks for non-EU residents. Were supposed to be implemented for November of this year. So if you are British and you are travelling to the EU, you would have to then go through a face recognition technology, and they'd also scan your fingerprints as well. But this technology is having teething problems, so this is being pushed back further, but essentially means that the European Union will have all of your facial recognition and your fingerprints on record forever as a means of wanting to travel through the Schengen Agreement, which is that agreement within the EU for EU citizens to pass through each member state without needing your passport for checks.
Yeah, it's interesting to see and to consider how this is going to be developing, and the concerns that we've been discussing are legitimate. They're recognized. There's ethical concerns of facial recognition. We have the UK government has detailed some of its concerns. It's had a response to facial recognition technology. The Minister of State for Crime, Policing and Fire, Professor Paul Taylor, National Policing Chief Scientific Advisor, have jointly supported progressing the use of this technology despite those concerns, right? The Minister of State for Crime, Policing and Fire, I strongly support the development and implementation of facial recognition technology within the law enforcement sector and are encouraged by its potential, they say. We firmly believe that embracing this advanced technology can significantly enhance public safety while respecting individual rights and privacy. Industry is pivotal to realization of that mission. It is essential to acknowledge the concerns surrounding facial recognition technology, they do admit, particularly those relating to privacy and potential biases. However, responsible development and implementation of facial recognition systems can address these concerns effectively. By establishing robust governance frameworks, implementing strict data protection protocols, and ensuring transparency and accountability, we can strike the right balance between public safety and individual privacy rights. To maximize the technological benefits and minimize the risks associated with FR, it is crucial that we support and encourage industry to continue developing capabilities which can be deployed effectively and ethically.
Well, it's good to get the government stance on face recognition technology, but these are some of the moral and ethic concerns regarding face recognition technology. So firstly, it's clear that face recognition technology is already being widely used for surveillance in our towns and cities, on our roads and by the police and businesses. The concerns are, what does the government, the police and these high-tech companies do with our data and our images? Video captured of individuals on door cameras could be used on police databases. The government can use this technology for state overreach or Big Brother to increase their power and control over the population. And face recognition technology in the hands of an authoritarian state is extremely dangerous, as this technology will be used to track down those the government deems to be an enemy of the state. And what is the danger? I think we've done enough programs over the last few years, Reagan, highlighting this, is facial recognition technology. Then that is then combined with AI technology that is combined with mass surveillance and China's social credit system, together with a single digital currency and a central digital bank currency, means that government has total control of every aspect of our lives. And if this technology is used by the wrong people, then this will trap us into a totalitarian regime.
Well, we're headed there, Simon, and this is one of those things that we need to be aware of. We need to recognize, and yes, it's important and right that we flag up and highlight the problems of where we're going. At the same time, we do need to also remember what Scripture speaks of. We need to remember the infrastructure that it details is going to be implemented, which is this beast system. I believe, and I've come across this idea, I think it is foolish to say, but we can keep this from happening. We can keep this from. There was a man who I remember he was waxing lyrical about how the Bible doesn't actually say we can keep a lot of what happens in Revelation from happening. I thought, this is absolutely moronic, and it's completely unbiblical. No, absolutely. This is going to happen. Jesus specifically tells us that we're going to experience these troubles. He outlines a good bit of what's included in Revelation in the Gospels, and then remember, it is Jesus who is communicating primarily to John, and then we have and his angels in a couple of cases communicating and showing John as well, but saying this is going to happen. And we should not fear. So fear is not the response. Take heart, I have overcome the world. We're leading on to a place of victory. We're going to be tested. There's going to be certain things in the way. We have to be real and honest about what's going on, but this is going to happen.
No, absolutely. So let's just remind ourselves of what the scriptures say, particularly Revelation chapter 13. And it was the vision given to John the Apostle on the island of Patmos over 2,000 years ago. Feels like these pages are coming true today when we see the advance of technology. So it says here, then I saw, and this is from Revelation chapter 13, 11 to 18. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. He performs great signs, and even makes fire come down from heaven on earth in the sight of men. And he decrees those who dwell on the earth by those signs which he was granted to do in the sight of the beast, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image of the beast who was wounded by the sword and lived. He granted power to give breath to the image, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause as many as would not worship the image to be killed. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or their foreheads, that no one can buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast and the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. His number is 666. Cashless society, we're nearly there.
And we're seeing the same authoritarianism, the totalitarianism, the other structures being put in place. We're in those days, as it was in the days of Noah, so it is going to be. And I look at where we're at in society, Simon, and it's difficult to pinpoint, and we can't be dogmatic on dates and times. That's foolishness. The scriptures tell us not to do that. At the same time, we do have the blessing of being informed in Scripture of the signs of the times.
Absolutely.
And I do believe that we are swiftly approaching that point. Widespread difficulty, widespread wars and rumors of wars, national disasters of a catastrophic level that have not existed in the same frame, the same scope, with the same magnitude in the centuries previous. There's statistical evidence that shows that. But now here we have this important area of technology and that infrastructure being built up that will have massive, massive impact in ushering in this system and structure of the beast.
Thank you, Reagan, for a great program, and I want to thank you for watching this program at home. We are certainly going through a technical revolution, and our lives will not be recognized in the next 2 or 3, maybe 4 years, as we see the introduction of face recognition technology, a digital currency, and the prospect of the government having mass surveillance over our lives. And if that is in the hands of an evil government, then we're in trouble, but we need to look up, because our redemption draws near. Let's focus on Jesus. Let's not focus on this technology. I want to thank you for watching this week's edition of Behind the Headlines.